Heat pumps are the technology cities are betting on to pull homes off gas and oil. But a bulky outdoor unit, a 240-volt circuit, and a multi-day install have kept them out of reach for millions of renters and apartment dwellers. But one San Francisco company has folded the whole thing into a window. Gradient, a startup founded by thermal scientists, makes a heat pump that drops over the sill like a saddlebag, plugs into a normal 120-volt outlet, and goes in with 2 people in under 30 minutes. No drill, no electrician, no permit. If it delivers, it opens efficient heating and cooling to the pre-war walk-ups, public housing blocks, and rented apartments that could never fit a mini-split or a central system. We are going to take a look into this new technology, work out how the saddlebag shape makes those numbers possible, and find out whether a heat pump in your window really is the future of home comfort. Space heating and cooling throw off as much as 5 gigatons of carbon dioxide every year. That is somewhere near a fifth of all global greenhouse gas emissions. In a dense city, the buildings themselves are the single biggest source of it, and getting them off fossil fuel is where the whole effort tends to stall. A lot of that comes down to how hard a heat pump is to install in the buildings that need one most. A conventional system arrives in 2 parts, an indoor head and an outdoor compressor, joined by copper refrigerant lines that a licensed technician has to braze and charge on site. It also needs a dedicated 240-volt circuit run by an electrician. In an older building, fitting it can mean drilling through the wall and upgrading the electrical panel first. The job pulls in more than one trade and can stretch across days. That barrier hits hardest where the housing is oldest. Around 54% of New York City's housing stock sits in buildings put up before 1947, and most of them lack the electrical capacity or the space a central system wants. So owners either defer the work or take on a disruptive, capital-heavy renovation that displaces tenants while it happens. Meanwhile, the old steam systems they are stuck with leak badly, losing up to 85% of their energy. Tenants end up cracking a window in January just to cool an overheated room. Cost, disruption, and the need for outdoor space are exactly the problems Gradient set out to solve. The San Francisco company was founded by Dr. Vince Romanin and Kip Bradford, backed by the research lab Other Lab. It pulled in more than $9 million in government grants, alongside venture funding, to rethink the hardware from scratch. In early 2025, it brought in climate tech veteran Patrick Bischoff as CEO, with Romanin moving to Chief Technology Officer to focus on thermodynamics. What they built is defined by its shape, an inverted U they call the saddlebag. A normal window AC crams the compressor, condenser, and evaporator into one fat box that blocks the glass. Gradient splits those parts into 2 slim vertical chambers, joined by a low bridge that sits over the sill. The heavy machinery, the variable speed compressor, and the outdoor coil and fan drops down below the sill outside. The indoor blower hangs below the sill inside. The glass stays clear, and the window still opens and closes. The engine is a reversible vapor compression cycle run by a variable speed inverter compressor. Instead of slamming on and off at full power, it modulates its speed to match the room. That keeps the startup current low enough to draw a maximum of 12 amps from a standard 120-volt outlet. That single fact is what removes the electrician and the panel upgrade. The refrigerant loop is sealed and charged at the factory, so there are no field-made joints to braze and nothing to leak over time. It runs on R32, a refrigerant with a global warming potential of 675. That is a big drop from the older R410A it replaces, which sits at 2088. There is a neat trick for the water too. Any AC pulls moisture out of the air, and a heat pump sheds meltwater when it defrosts in winter. Rather than dripping it down the building, Gradient mists it as a fine vapor into the outdoor exhaust. So there are no hoses and no drips. In winter, it can even route some of that moisture back indoors to soften dry air. Control runs through a phone app, the unit's own dial, or a remote, so you can schedule heating and cooling from anywhere. Each unit delivers 9,000 BTU of cooling and the same in heating, enough for a medium room. It moves up to 400 cubic feet of air a minute through dual indoor vents, with an optional MERV 13 filter that catches allergens and wildfire smoke. Set against a high-end ductless mini-split, the Gradient gives up some raw efficiency. A good mini-split can reach a SEER 2 above 20 and hold a slightly higher heating output in deep cold. But that performance comes bundled with the outdoor unit, the 240-volt circuit, the licensed install, and all the building work we have already walked through. And that is only if the building can take it in the first place. Where Gradient pulls ahead is everything around the box. Because it runs off an existing 120-volt circuit, it skips the building-level electrical work that sinks most retrofits. Upgrading a pre-war building's service panels and risers for central heat pumps can run between $500,000 and $1.5 million per building. A window unit sidesteps that entirely. That is the saving that actually moves the math at scale. Then there is the honest cold weather caveat. Gradient sells this as an all-weather unit, and it is genuinely cold capable, holding its full 9,000 BTU of heat down to 17 degrees Fahrenheit. But below that, the output tapers. It falls to 7,200 BTU at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, with a floor around -7 degrees Fahrenheit. So it earns the cold climate label, but in a hard northern snap, it is working near its limit rather than coasting. There is also the plain window AC for a few $100s, but that only cools, blocks the glass, leaks air around the seal, and runs far less efficiently. Gradient's own all-weather model is certified as the highest efficiency window AC on the market, and it heats as well. More than ever, cities are forcing this change rather than waiting for it. New York's Local Law 97 began capping building emissions in 2024, with the limits tightening in 2030. Owners of larger buildings now face fines of $268 for every metric ton of carbon they go over. Because heating and hot water produce most of a building's direct emissions, full electrification is the only real path to compliance. Boston, Seattle, Toronto, and much of the European Union are bringing in similar rules. At the same time, the grid itself sets a limit. Switching a city's heating from gas straight to electric resistance would push winter demand past what local distribution can carry, and rebuilding that capacity would cost a fortune. A heat pump moves several units of heat for each unit of electricity, so it eases that peak instead of worsening it. Better still, variable speed units can be told to ease off together during a demand spike, shaving the peak without anyone feeling cold. And as summers grow hotter, cooling is shifting from a comfort to a health necessity, which makes a single box that does both at once land at the right moment. For all that, Gradient has real ground to cover. The first obstacle is the upfront cost. A single unit carries a list price of $3,800. Once you add the structural window work to mount the saddlebag safely, a full per-suite cost can land near $15,000. For a housing authority with thousands of apartments, that runs into hundreds of millions. History gives a warning here too. Cheap packaged AC units in hotels were treated as disposable and often neglected into early failure. What would resolve it is financing that removes the upfront hit, paired with service agreements that enforce the maintenance. The second is the cold itself. As the outdoor air drops below about 43 degrees Fahrenheit, frost builds on the outdoor coil. The unit then has to pause and run a defrost cycle, briefly borrowing heat from the room to clear the ice. That is unavoidable physics, and it is part of why output falls as the temperature sinks. The fix is better coil coatings that hold frost off for longer, plus multi-stage compressors that keep capacity up in the deep cold. Both are improving with each generation. The third is the refrigerant. R32 is a step forward, but the industry's real target is propane, which has a global warming potential of just 3 and performs beautifully in the cold. The trouble is that propane is flammable, and US safety rules have capped the charge so low that it cannot fill a 9,000 BTU unit. Loosening those limits for sealed outdoor circuits, where the propane stays away from the living space, is what would open that door. Even with those caveats, the deployments are mounting up. Gradient's anchor is a contract through New York City's Clean Heat for All Challenge to deliver 10,000 cold climate window heat pumps for public housing. The program was built specifically to electrify older, multifamily buildings without the electrical upgrades, refrigerant piping, and through wall drilling that usually slow the work down. The clearest proof so far is in Providence. In April 2026, Gradient finished fitting 277 of its all-weather units across the 194 apartments of Carroll Tower, a 15-story senior housing block running on 50-year-old electric baseboards. The whole building was converted in 12 days. Early estimates put the savings near 450,000 kilowatt-hours a year, about $94,500 for the property, while cutting roughly 219 tons of carbon annually. It stands as one of the largest installations of this technology in the country to date. The harder road ahead is reaching ordinary renters and single-family homes. That depends on new shapes that fit casement and sliding windows, since the saddlebag for now needs a single or double hung window at least about 26 inches wide. Gradient began shipping its all-weather unit to the wider market in early 2025, so that path is open, if still early. What Gradient really represents is a change in what counts as a heat pump install. It takes a job that meant trades, permits, and days of disruption, and turns it into an appliance 2 people hang in a window before lunch. The upfront cost is still steep, and the deep cold performance still has headroom to grow. But the tightening carbon laws, the strained grid, and the institutional money lining up behind it all point the same way. If you want to stay ahead of where home energy is going, subscribe and stick around, because we will keep covering the most interesting developments in home technology in real time.